Thank you for joining us for From Idea to Implementation, a Ranked Choice Voting and Voting Systems Symposium. Our sixth session, Voting Systems and RCV Capabilities, Unisyn Voting Solutions, will begin shortly. My name is Karen Brinson Bell, and I am a member of the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center consulting team. I will be your moderator for this session. A few housekeeping matters before we get started. Participants have been muted for this webinar to reduce audio interference. Since we have a large number of attendees, if you have technical issues, please use the question option to send a message to the organizer so we may try to assist. If you have a question or comment regarding the session, please type that message in the question box. Session 6 will be about 20 minutes, followed by a brief question and answer period. Questions we are unable to address during this live session will be answered in a follow-up document, which we will email to attendees and also post with a recording of this session on the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center website within a couple of weeks of the symposium. Now let's welcome Chris Rohde, intern with the Resource Center and FairVote, to introduce our first voting system vendor.
Thank you, Karen. For those that are not familiar with the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center, we provide a compilation of best practices and firsthand experiences from jurisdictions that have used this method of voting with a focus on election administrations, since that's our background. Our website, www.rankedchoicevoting.org, and the overall project serve as resources for voters, election administrators, policymakers, candidates, and others. The Resource Center continues to evolve, as does Ranked Choice Voting. Both have gone from idea to implementation, and we hope these resources and sessions help you and others provide or improve our democracy in the conduct of elections. McDermott Koontz, Chief Architect and Director of Technical Development for Unisyn Voting Solutions, will share the company's voting system and its capabilities for ranked choice voting. Unisyn Voting Solutions is an international election systems corporation based out of Vista, California. It was formed in 2001 following the presidential election. I'll now turn the presentation over to McDermott to tell us more about Unisyn and its voting system.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, a little bit of a technical difficulties here getting my screen going.
We see your desktop right now, McDermott.
Okay, do you see, let's see.
We see your slideshow, but we see two screens, so it looks like you're in notes version.
Right. How about that?
That's full screen. So I'll turn it over to you now.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. My name is McDermott Koontz. I'm the Director of Software Development for Unisyn Voting Solutions. I'm also a technical expert for the TGDC, working with the EAC and NIST to develop new voting system standards. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Unisyn Voting Solutions implementation of ranked choice voting. And I'm looking forward to your questions. So, a little bit of history on Unisyn Voting Solutions. The Open Elect product line was first certified in 2010. It was the first VVSG certified voting system certified to support ranked choice voting. We supported ranked choice voting as implemented here, as I'll describe later, since the beginning. We have continued to certify and support ranked choice voting since that time through 5 federal test campaigns. So this is something we continue to support and actively promote. The system is currently used in over 190 jurisdictions in 10 states in the United States, though to be in the interest of clarity, nobody is currently using it for ranked choice voting. First part I want to talk about is the ranked choice voting interface. We support this both in our ballot marking device and on our printed ballots. I'm showing you here on the left-hand side the way it looks on the printed ballot, and on the right-hand side how it looks on the touch screen. We support up to a maximum rank value of 3. And as you can see, we give the voters instructions on how to vote. as well as better instructions up front on the ballot. The right-hand side on the ballot marking device, that interface is 100% ADA compatible, so it can be used through both a touchscreen, keypad, and also a sip and puff device. So that's how we collect the votes. All the votes are printed on paper ballots and run through a scanner, and the cast vote records are uploaded into the tally system. We have several options as far as tallying when you go into the tabulator, when everything is aggregated. What to do when you have an invalid ranking: you can either go to the next valid ranking, or you can exhaust the ballot. So if this is in case a voter skips a rank, so if they do 1 and 3 and they don't do 2, you have a choice of whether to exhaust the ballot immediately or to go on to the 3rd rank. We also have 3 options for breaking ties for last place, basically determining how you would eliminate a voter or a candidate. You can either do manual selection, in which case we just give you the list of where everybody is, and you can say which one you want to remove. We can do it based on who had the most votes in the previous round, or you can delete everybody at the bottom. So again, we're talking about the next valid ranking. This gives you the ability to move to the next valid ranking. I think I've covered this fairly also with the tab breaking management. So how do we support multiple seat contests? It's fairly straightforward with a single seat. We do elimination transfer of votes only. We do not do single transferable vote. So the contest is a vote for 1 in each rank in the contest regardless, but in the tabulator we have the ability to set the number of seats on all the RCV contests. And you can see the interface that we give you on the right-hand side. So at the end so when we calculate the RCV tally, we determine the threshold for winning, much the same as any other time. And we keep going through the rounds of the RCV report until somebody has met that threshold. At the end, we provide a report on the winners, or actually the people who had the maximum number of votes. And we also show you exactly how things worked during the ranking. So you can see on the bottom of this, you can see 1st round, 2nd round, 3rd round, and so on and so forth down the line. How many votes were attributed to somebody else, and when candidates were exhausted. We try to give you as much clarity as to the process, and hopefully that will allow you to explain things to your voters more effectively. I realize that this was a very short presentation. I can absolutely go back over some of it again, but again, this is a very nicely integrated part of our system and works pretty seamlessly. We are looking at this point to implement a single transferable vote. We're working on the requirements right now. The other thing that we are looking at very seriously is as people start working on or start accepting a common data format for cast vote records, to be able to integrate with other systems with our tally. So again, quick presentation, and if you have any questions, I'm more than willing to answer them.
Great. We do have a couple of questions already in place that we want to ask of each of the vendors. For our attendees, please remember to type your questions in the question box of the control panel, and that'll give me the ability to see those and ask of McDermott. So McDermott, the couple of questions that we're going to make sure we ask each of the vendors, and we are very excited that you all have agreed to do these presentations as part of the symposium. Quite often, the ability for the voting equipment to handle ranked choice voting is one of the key hurdles that we have to overcome, and the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center has certainly enjoyed working with each of the vendors trying to address that aspect. And as you mentioned, Unisyn's had that in place for some time. So our first set question that we want to ask is, if you have multiple ranked choice voting contests on the ballots, how is tabulation managed? How would we see those contests if there's multiples?
I'm going to go back on my slides here. So every contest, and you can have a mix of both a ranked choice voting and non-ranked choice contest on a ballot. And at that point, you would see a number of interfaces like you see on the left or the right for each contest. The tally tape is going to show the results for the first rank only on the individual in-precinct tabulator. There's no point in showing ranked choice voting results outside of until you've aggregated all of the ballots, obviously. But then, if you go to RCV tally parameters, it basically gives you a list of all the contests and that support ranked choice voting in the aggregation. And it'll tell you how many ranks. So you can see in this one on the right-hand side, we've got 3 ranks for president, 2 ranks for governor, et cetera, et cetera.
And then I assume in the results display, it would just show as individual contests and have a similar breakdown for each contest.
So the report that you see on the right-hand side, it'll show you that for every contest that supports ranked choice voting.
Great. Also, the other set question we're going to be asking of each vendor is, can your RCV tabulation module be used to tabulate vote records from any of your legacy systems as well?
The system, there is no real legacy system. We've continued the OpenElect product since it was first certified in 2010, directly supporting ranked choice voting as I described here. So yes, every system that we have certified can tally ranked choice voting.
Great.
All on its.
We've got a question about your assistive ballot marking device. What ADA machine is used? And I think in general, maybe for some who aren't familiar with what is in the Unisyn system, certainly take a moment to just describe outside of RCV what is available through Unisyn as voting equipment.
Right. So we have in the precinct, we have our in-precinct tabulator, which is a 8.5 inch full page scanner. So it can do both ballots both presented by ballot marking devices and by the full page ballots printed by the printer. We have 2 ballot marking devices currently on the market. We have what we call the OVI, which is a 15-inch touchscreen that can be used through either touchscreen, keypad, or sip and puff device to navigate through the ballot. The other device we have, we call the Freedom Vote tablet. It is a larger screen, but takes in the same inputs. It can use a keypad, a sip and puff device, a touch screen. It also has an additional screen reader mode, which works approximately like it's actually the normal audio interface for iPhones. Swipe right moves you to the next thing. Swipe back moves you to the previous thing. Up and down controls volume. 2 fingers up and down controls tempo. The way the interface is set up is that you can use the keypad or the touch to move up and down the candidates. If you have already selected that candidate, it will tell you which rank it is. If you hit the selection button again, it will move the vote to the next rank on the ballot, or the next rank for that candidate. Moving down again will move you to the next candidate, and so on and so forth. It will actively prevent you from voting more than once in a single rank, and will prevent you from overvoting. And it will also warn you if you have not voted in each rank. So at the end of the when you come to the summary portion of it, it will say you have voted for candidate A in rank 1, candidate B in rank 2, and candidate B in rank 3.
Excellent. We've just gotten a question in. Do you plan to support proportional representation elections in the future when many more than 3 choices are needed? So proportional representation, I think you touched on the single transferable vote aspect, but if you want to touch back on that again.
Yeah, so we are actively, that's actually on the list for our next version to implement single transferable vote. At least one of the implementations of it, maybe 2, depending on how ambitious we are feeling. Now, to get to full proportional representation, much like they do in Australia, that's going to take a fairly significant change in the interface on the full page ballots, and does present certain challenges for doing it on a touch screen because of the requirements for the size of targets and the size of text. You run into limited real estate very, very quickly. So that's something that we're going to have to look at very carefully. At this point, we may increase our ranks to up to 5 based on real estate. But going beyond that, I'm still trying to figure out how we would make that work, and I'm willing to take suggestions.
We'll be happy to work with you on those. I'm sure that's also something that's coming up with your working groups, not just from a ranked choice voting standpoint, but just accessibility and usability for voters in general, if you want to talk about your working group at all.
Right. So I'm actually the chair of the testing group, which is responsible for the VVSG. We are actually responsible making sure that the requirements that are being written are actually testable. Ultimately, what we want to avoid in that regard is anything that is subject to judgment. Ultimately, we want to be able to look at a system and say, yes, this meets the standard, or no, it doesn't. Very binary. So that's part of what that working group is doing. The rest of the VVS, one of the big items that is going on with that is obviously accessibility and usability. I'm actually quite pleased with the requirements that have come out of that, except for a couple of minor issues, which I continue to discuss, like the minimum screen size is not something that's actually built. But there are some very complete requirements. But making it work with the RCV is going to be a bit of a challenge.
And again, I guess that goes back to the real estate, as you said, the actual screen.
Right. Ability. I mean, yeah. So I mean, we could put a 36-inch touchscreen on it, and that might work.
And I guess as we look at possibly electronically transmitting to accessible voters with needing accessibility features, if that were to take place, then there's other issues involved as far as what they might have available to them in their homes as well.
Right. One way to do that is to actually split each rank up into an individual contest and basically track, and you can link them all together. And so you just track, this is rank 1, rank 2, rank 3, rank 4. The challenge that I run into is, I don't know if anybody remembers this, but there was a recall contest in California for governor about 10, 15 years ago. And that included 120 candidates. So the concept of trying to do ranked choice voting with that many candidates kind of makes my head hurt.
That's amazing. I think you've given us all an education today on that contest for sure. I'm going to go, we've gotten another question in, and they just wanted you to touch base on if they understood correctly that Unisyn does not have any jurisdictions using RCV at this time.
That is correct. Nobody is currently using it. I am perfectly willing to go in and pilot it. I think one other thing I want to bring up about the common data, about the VVSG, one of the things we are working on actively is the concept of common data format and a common data format for cast vote records. Once we get a common data format for cast vote records, that is actually going to allow the concept of RCV elections to expand, because it will allow you to merge the results from multiple jurisdictions and tally them.
You are hitting on something that we'll definitely be talking a good bit about late this afternoon. So, you plugged our universal tabulator without even realizing it. So that'll be session 10, our final session, and that's some work that we've been doing, because there will be jurisdictions, states that have multiple voting systems and would need to merge, like you're talking about. So thank you. You didn't even realize, but I'm gonna take that last question and ask what motivated Unisyn to include ranked choice voting in their system at the forefront? So often it's a request by a jurisdiction to have that added, and yet your company chose to have it in the initial product.
One of the main reasons is that we saw the capability and adding that function into the system was not all that difficult at the way we implemented it. It became it was honestly a good selling point. We could do it, and it was going to be very, very easy to use. So it made perfect sense for us to add it. It's actually something that I quite like, mostly from the concept of making the elections more around the issues rather than bashing your opponent.
That is definitely one of the benefits that has been proven with ranked choice voting, and it sounds like there's some advocates out there who can go and advocate for ranked choice voting in jurisdictions that have Unisyn voting equipment, and if that hurdle, at least they won't have that hurdle of voting equipment to overcome. At this point, McDermott, I don't find that I have any additional questions, but we may get some others. And so we encourage folks to continue to send us questions. We will be following up with you and others from Unisyn to put these questions and any others into a Q&A document that will be posted along with our recording. And that recording will be coming up, be made available in just a few weeks. I'm going to switch to my view now so that everyone can see the links and information for the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center. And we certainly appreciate your time, McDermott, and the work that Unisyn has put into voting systems for our election. And we thank you all for joining us for session 6 of the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center Symposium. And we will have our next session at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time with Hart InterCivic to talk about their voting systems and RCV capabilities. Until then, we thank you for joining us, and we'll be back again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.